Today we're going to practice writing similes and metaphors. Our lesson goal is I will write meaningful similes and metaphors. What's the difference between a simile and a metaphor? A metaphor compares two things without using the words like or as. A simile uses the words like or as. So that's why in the comic it says metaphor is telling him you're a weasel. He's comparing him to a weasel without using the words like or as. The simile says, well, I'm like one, because the simile uses the word like or the word as. So if it compares two things without the words like or as, it's a metaphor. If it compares two things with the words like or as, it's a simile. The purpose of similes and metaphors is to compare two things. Similes and metaphors let the reader picture your meaning more clearly. But watch out! The comparisons we make with similes and metaphors should never be random or dull. So, what's the comparison in some of these quotes, and why does it make sense? Let's look at all the world's a stage by Shakespeare. That's a metaphor. The world is like a stage. How is the world like a stage? So, how is the world a stage, like a stage? If we were to write a simile, well, let's see. On this side, if we think about what applies to both, a life and a stage, you're both, like you're going through the motions. There's scenes to both life and a stage. You have to like act out your role in life, and you have to act out your part in a play. You have to keep going until the play is over. Like if you mess up in the middle of the play, you don't just get to stop. You have to keep and just try and like fix it. And the same with life. If you mess up in the middle of your life, you don't get to just stop. You have to keep going and try and fix your story. You have a life story, you have a stage story. So those are some ways that life is like a stage. So they have scenes or stages, each tells a story. Some are happy, some are tragic, some are just average. They have exits and entrances. There's a curtain that closes when the play is over. Those are all ways that they're similar or different, or that they're similar. So step 2 would be to write your simile or metaphor. When we do that, we have to make sure we understand the reason for the comparison. So all the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players. Well, how is a highway like life? If we were going to write a simile or metaphor comparing life to a highway, how are they the same? Okay. Again, I could do a Venn diagram, and I'm thinking about what goes in the middle, what is true for both life and for a highway. So both involve a journey. Each requires a direction to get to a destination. You can get lost if you're not careful. You don't always see what's coming. There are bends in the road or unexpected obstacles. You have to be careful or you can get hurt. So then we would write our simile or our metaphor. Life is like a highway because without a clear intention or without a plan, you can get lost. So effective metaphors don't just say life is a highway, life is a stage. You have to make a comparison and it has to make sense. So if I say a hospital bed is a parked taxi with the meter running, how is that? What are we comparing with those two things? What would the reason be? Well, a hospital bed, like it's really expensive to be in the hospital. If you're in the hospital, like every night you're in the hospital, they're charging you more and more money. If you ever take a taxi, if you tell the taxi, take me here and then wait outside until I'm done and you're going to drive me back home, the entire time you're inside and the taxi is parked, it's running its meter, which is how it charges you money. Like it figures out how much money you owe them. So it's saying that they're both alike because the longer you're in them or the longer they're waiting for you, the more money you owe them. So, you're going to do a writing similes and metaphors activity. Step 1 is to figure out what words you're comparing. Step 2 is to brainstorm how they're alike. Then you're going to turn them into a simile or metaphor. Make sure you understand why those two things are the same. You have to have a reason. So you're going to pick two words and highlight them. How are dirty socks like test day? Annotate in OneNote and then turn in your link to Canvas. You need to have 3 different examples of similes or metaphors. At least one must be a simile and one must be a metaphor.